They are choosing XRP. Trump, US companies, banks, they're all choosing XRP for a very simple reason. It wins always.
The US dollar has lost 95% of its purchasing power. As the world moves towards blockchain and
Guys, remember when you could get ice cream for like 10 cents? I remember. You know, it's really sad what's happening with the US dollar nowadays. Basically, if you don't notice that the US dollar is dropping, it also means that, real estate is perhaps rising in price, and you see real estate go up 30%. That means your dollar is lost now. Slightly less.
Digital innovation, you start to wonder, is the next world reserve currency going to be a digital asset? Is it going to be XRP? I'm going to go ahead and show you some information why I believe if the world had to take the step today towards a digital world reserve currency, that in fact would be XRP. Let's go ahead and give you some information. I'm going to give you some history. It's going to be a fun video, guys. Let's jump into it. So here's from the Kobayashi letter, the longest bear market, the US dollar purchasing power. Over the last 100 years, the US dollar has lost 95% of its purchasing power. Since 2000, the US dollar has lost over 40% of its purchasing power. Own assets or be left behind. And
I feel like this is also because if you look at historically, now more of people have started using different country currencies to trade. Before we were using USD for everything, but now major powers have combined to actually try to compete with the US dollar as well. And they're selling a lot of their resources in their own currency. That's what's happening with the market.
Why a lot of people,
US knows that. US knows it's losing money. That's why they want to make XRP like the global currency of that way.
People think, owning Bitcoin or digital assets is going to be the solution here. I just wanted to give you some additional information on this. The US dollar's long-term decline in purchasing power is well documented. The BRICS nations, which are Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, are accelerating their shift away from the US dollar in global trade, focusing on enhancing financial sovereignty and reducing exposure to US-centric economic shocks, and sanctions. Initiatives include the development of BRICS cross-border payment system and the creation of a local currency-based mechanism explicitly aiming for de-dollarization and not yet replacing the US dollar as a reserve currency, but they're trying to. Now, there's a lot of people that believe this new BRICS currency could be built on something like the XRP ledger or use crypto assets in some way.
It's pretty obvious that basically the main flag the main attractor in crypto is not going to be a meme coin to US investors. It's going to be XRP. It's going to be a US-based company that's going to have its own ETF that the US investors who just got into crypto can believe in.
You have Brazil in here, that Ripple has been working with the Brazilian government for quite some time. They have operations in Brazil. They have operations in Africa. They have operations that connect into China and India, and even Russia has tested the XRP ledger. So you start to wonder, what are these, what are they going to be working on here?
That's not because of the US dollar dropping. It's just because, XRP technology doesn't care which country you're from. You're going to make money from it anyway. You're going to save fees from it. So might as well, make it live.
Is discussion within BRICS launching a new reserve currency, the unit, potentially backed by a basket of member currencies or possibly gold. So here it is. They might put together, yuan and the South African rand and all of these different currencies, basket them together, back it with gold or oil, and that could be what backs this new currency. Now, could XRP become the world reserve currency? XRP, of course, was developed by Ripple Labs. It is designed for high speed, low cost, and scalable cross-border payments. These features solve many pain points in traditional banking and fiat transfer systems. Industry experts, including Wall Street, Linda P. Jones, and Ripple CTO David Schwartz, have speculated that XRP could become a global reserve currency due to its neutrality.
I don't believe that. Why not make a stable coin, for example, like a global currency? Why XRP? So let's say if they want to make XRP a global currency, you buy a house and the next time XRP goes down 50%, you could have bought this house half cheaper. Do you get what I mean? The currency is always going to be something cheap.
country controls it, efficiency, sustainability, and settlement between international banks. When you are a competing superpower, you don't want to give the power that you might be up against, right? You might be doing trade, you might be friends on paper, but at the end of the day, right, your military is planning what happens if you guys attack each other. There's always these conversations and all these plans. So countries are wary about if the US dollar were to fail tomorrow and they had to go to a new currency, Russia would want their currency, right? China would want their currency. India would want their currency. And it's very hard to agree on what that currency could be. And this is why maybe it could be something like XRP, because it is a neutral bridge asset. XRP's distributed ledger is already attracting institutional interest with banks and payment providers testing.
Very important to say, banks only accept a certain part of the XRP ledger. They won't integrate the whole XRP ledger, like the whole blockchain, but maybe they want to use the fast transfers, and it's like a tool, you know? XRP ledger might be working on some things with Bank of America and other things with Bank of Japan. They each want its own thing. Some of them want very low transfer fees, the other one want very fast. Anyway, you get the idea.
Or adopting Ripple's technology as a bridge asset for liquidity settlement. Talks about practical financial impact proposals submitted to the US regulators project that XRP could unlock much of the 1.5 trillion in banking liquidity, primarily through freeing up capital now trapped in Nostro Vostro. I've seen this number as high as like 25 trillion, right? I don't know if 1.5 trillion is quite accurate, but maybe some of the US banks. It does talk about annual transaction cost saving estimated at 7.5 billion. I believe it's way more than that. And I just want to get into some other information here. So this is cool. I was looking this up and I thought, you know, I'll add.
Dutch Republic's dominance international trade, Dutch guilder, reserve currency timeline last 600 years. And yeah, it was different things for the Dutch reserve currencies. Like we had different stuff. We have US now, and I feel like it's going to stay US for the next 100 years. Because look at here, the Portuguese real, you know, that's not existing anymore. And also, this only lasted for 200, at least this lasted for at least 200 years. So this doesn't indicate that XRP is going to be a world reserve currency. Now, that's a bit of a reach in my opinion. I don't think it will happen. But guys, let me know in the comments below.
This into the video. I thought maybe some people would like this information. Portuguese, real Spanish. So during the 15th and 17th centuries, the world reserve currency of that era was the Portuguese real, Spanish real de ocho. And then in the 18th century, 17th and 18th centuries, about 200 years, the Dutch guldeer was the world reserve currency. So big shout out to everyone that is watching that is from Dutch Republic. I should know this. I do apologize. Is it Amsterdam? Hold on. I'm so blanking. Netherlands. Man, Cass, my editor, is going to kill me. Blonde moment there. I apologize. British pound sterling, early 19th century, mid 20th century. And then here's the US dollar, 1944 to present. So, you know, you start to see shorter time spans of these currencies being held. The average is 80 to 100 years. We are approaching that number pretty quickly here in the United States. So you start to wonder what is next. Now,
I don't think that it will XRP could replace that, because why wouldn't they just pick another stablecoin? Why would US ever replace their US dollar as a reserve currency? I mean, it's a bit of a far reach, don't you think? Like, you could be picking anything else than XRP. So why would you pick XRP, which, yeah, it's a very good structure, but it's not made to replace a world currency.
Already existing standard drawing rights SDR. And most critically, who had the authority to manage it, right? So who is going to be in control of it? Without an effective government to back it, a world reserve currency of any kind, whether based on the SDR or invited de novo, would have difficulty attaining even a minimal level of credibility. So this is why you start to wonder, you know, could Ripple that SDR? Let me just show you this real quick.
Or that a group of countries across the world agree to a set of rules, and they agreed to play by them.
What underpins a world order is always the financial system. And what we're seeing in the world today, I think, is we are on the brink of a dramatic change where we are about to, and I'll say this boldly, we're about to abandon the traditional system of money and accounting and introduce a new one.
Everyone's been predicting the demise of the dollar for a long time.
And the new one, the new accounting, is what we call blockchain. It means digital. It means having a almost perfect record of every single transaction that happens in the economy, which will give us far greater clarity over what's going on. It also raises huge dangers in terms of the balance of power between states and citizens. In my opinion, we're going to need a digital constitution of human rights if we're going to have digital money. But also, this new money will be sovereign in nature. Most people think that digital money is crypto and private. I find it very difficult to talk about the world order that we're coming into, given how very tenuous and unstable.
I'll say it again, and I always said it. I really feel like that cryptocurrency will always be like a secondary stock market, but it will never like reach to the point where Bitcoin is going to be anything more than an asset. It's not going to be a currency itself. And if it's going to be stable coins. Stable coins which are going to be digitalized, which you can digitalize them already as well. So it doesn't make any sense. You know how hard it is to going to be replaced like a 300 trillion with a T market cap? How you're suddenly going to tell people, hey, we accept XRP? We haven't even gotten to the point where XRP can accept more than 1% of the global transactions. So this is just like wishful thinking for now.
The current environment is. In my lifetime, this is the second time that I have seen the superpowers actually threaten the possibility of nuclear war.
Man, everybody wants their own power, right? Everyone's vying for the effect. The IMF is indeed discussing the real possibility of a world reserve currency, and the conversation is centered around digital assets and related technologies. Their documentation and expert commentary show that the debate has shifted towards digital money, central bank digital currencies, tokenized assets, stablecoins, or potentially a digital form of special drawing rights. What technology? So like, I didn't even talk about XRP here, right? I did ask what technology that Perplexity thinks that if the IMF had to make a decision on a new world reserve currency or an ESDR, what digital asset would that be? And you guessed it. Let me show you. It does talk about central bank digital currencies. The IMF sees CBDCs as a critical part of the future international system, especially for cross-border payments, financial inclusion, and policy transmission. Talks about most major central banks are exploring or piloting their own CBDCs, and frameworks for interoperability and scalability between the digital currencies are top priorities. So how do you make all of this work together? If every central bank creates their own technology, right, that doesn't interconnect with the current system, the new rails rebuilding the same system that we currently have. The reason the system is broken, right, the SWIFT system, is everything is siloed, right? Nothing is able to interconnect. Everyone's sending different messages, and this is why we moved to ISO 20022, and the world is all doing different things. Everyone needs to be on the same plane, doing the same thing, making interoperability, and this is how value will move seamlessly across borders. Talks about tokenized ESDRs. There are significant commentary suggesting that the IMF could promote a multi-currency digital asset, a digital reserve asset, which would be...
Now, this is a nice thing that the government has been teasing in January, that we are getting our own XRP, that they're going to be buying XRP. Imagine the US government telling you we're going to be buying XRP. That would definitely be nice. They said they will buy crypto assets, Ethereum, Bitcoin, XRP, but soon they actually found out this is a legal issue because you're going to have to spend taxpayers' money, which they didn't ask for to buy crypto. And someone has to hold that, right? So they basically said that it's not going to be done this year, which I found very sad because that would definitely boost XRP and crypto. But yeah, that is something that the government is considering. Not world currency, not using, stable coins are going to be its own thing, like separate from the US dollar, but they're going to kind of boost it in that sense. So just consider that XRP can still be the number one pick for a lot of these countries.
Backed by a basket of major currencies, an ESDR could use blockchain technology to facilitate issuance, transparency, and flexibility in supply, and would be politically neutral if managed by a consortium of central banks and private sector actors. By a consortium of central banks.
The issue with US dollar is going to be very hard to replace. Like replacing the US dollar overnight, it's like gonna cost billions.
Private sector actors. Private sector, what does that mean to you? Well, it's like Ripple, right? Circle. It's where the private sector comes into play. Banks are inherently bad at creating technology. They go out into the world and they partner with the private sector to bring the best technology forward. And that's what we have been seeing over the last few years when testing the XRP Ledger or the XLM or Hedera HBAR. So let's talk about interoperable permission networks. IMF and central banks stress the need for technologies that allow global, interoperable, and secure settlement rather than fragmented on private chain solutions. So, big discussion used to be private chains. We need made everything private, private, private. Now banks and central banks have been open to looking at public blockchains. This is where the XRP ledger could provide both of those, right? Ripple has private ledgers for the central banks that want to build wholesale CBDCs, right? Make all of those transactions private, but then you use the XRP ledger public if you want to make some type of retail CBDC. This has led to proposals for permission distributed ledger technologies with robust identity compliance and settlement mechanisms, potentially integrating platforms like Ripple and Stellar. It already knows, right? If you look back at the last 10 years, all the piloting and the demonstrations and the working groups and everything else, Ripple and Stellar show up time and time again. They are there in the rooms behind the scenes. Ripple more so than Stellar, in my personal opinion. Stellar's really focused on the retail aspect of all this. Ripple's always target the institution.
So Stellar just had a partnership with PayPal, but it's really the money is coming from the big bank partnership. So yeah, Stellar is another project that's doing well. And obviously, if one of these projects does well, the others will follow. So don't feel bad if one of these projects outperforms the other. Let's say Stellar does a 200x. That means also, you know, the same industry, XRP will also do well. So just let that sink in mind.
Level, right? This is why owning both of these assets could be hugely beneficial in the future. Which assets, and Stellar, excellent, are similar assets and often discussed as leading contenders for connecting legacy banking with blockchain rails due to their speed, efficiency, and track record across cross-border payments and institutional partnerships. It doesn't say Chainlink. Notice that? Everyone says Chainlink's the solution to everything. Chainlink.
I mean, a lot of these companies and a lot of these projects got outsourced and are basically much worse than they were before. Like XRP is the number one because it kept developing and upgrading. You guys don't, like, believe me, there's like 10 times the upgrades we saw with some other projects that just faded out.
It's not a settlement asset. Chainlink is nor a bridge asset. Chainlink is a vital piece of the puzzle. Don't get me wrong. All of this stuff needs to work together. You're going to need multiple ecosystems, multiple blockchains, multiple technologies to make all of this work correctly. You never want to have just one thing. Imagine going forward and we're relying on just one ecosystem. Something happens to that ecosystem in any capacity, the world would shut down. This is why you need to have the interoperability part. You need to have all of the working groups. You need to have all of these countries and governments and jurisdictions talking and working together to build this. All right, let me show you this real quick. This is Brad Garlinghouse way back in the day. Sensei, you're playing an old clip. I understand, but it goes to what we're talking about.
When XRP was created, this actually was created before Ripple existed. The creators of XRP decided there'd be 100 billion units because they saw it as rather than having a smaller number with a very high price, they saw it as something they wanted to be effectively a global reserve currency.
When they were building this, they had it in their minds. We're going to build the next global reserve currency. That is what their whole goal has been from the start. One of them, at least. And the evolution of Ripple, the company, going through the lawsuit, getting the legal clarity that they need in the biggest jurisdiction in the entire world, which is the United States, now becoming a national bank. The puzzle pieces are finally coming together. We're starting to see that this has been planned all along.
So let's just sort of think about this. You've got a bunch of different tokenization systems, and ideally, you do want different countries, you want global commerce. Wouldn't you need a central bank, sort of one central, not necessarily reserve, sort of like a reserve currency where everybody could exchange their tokenized assets and trade them? Wouldn't that require...
Listen, really quickly, you got to understand, you need a bridge asset to go in between different currencies or different cryptos or different assets, right? So if you tokenize real estate and stocks and derivatives and debt and all these different things, right? You have all of these different, a whole list of them, right? But you need to swap those into whatever else you're selling into. And if you have every currency or every digital currencies that's interconnected, you can swap anything for anything. That is the future of what we're talking about here for cheaply.
That will happen in the future, but this is going to take at least 10 years, guys. For XRP to have and handle these type of transactions, that's called real world assets, RWA. You guys are going to be hearing a lot more about that, but we're in very early stages of that happening.
Right? Under a penny. Instant settlement, 3 to 5 seconds. This is the future of finance. I thought this clip was really good. I've actually interviewed this gentleman years ago, and he's like I do apologize. I cannot remember this gentleman's name to save my life, but he is building in the XRP space. Let me go ahead and play this.
You hold XRP, you own at least One XRP is 1/100 billion of all the wealth of the human race.
What would that make for the entity Ripple then?
Well, that would make Ripple the world bank.
Let's expand upon that. What does that mean for those in the audience who might not be engaged in the XRP community or have an understanding of what the World Bank entails?
You know, I'm sure as people who have never heard this before or aren't aware of Ripple and XRP, they're listening to this and they might think, oh, this guy's a conspiracy theorist, right? They don't know. Because somebody like me who has studied finance going back to the Roman Empire, going back to before that, all the way back to the stone money dials on Yap Island in the Federated States of Micronesia, when you look at the patterns and history of money to where we are right now, after the petrodollar, after we came off the gold reserve, there's really only one competitor to be the global reserve currency, only one thing that can come in and replace the dollar, and that is XRP.
Reaper Finance is the guy's CEO. Let me see if this is still around. Reaper. All good. Let's keep it going here. Ripple. Most importantly, we remain more.
I just don't feel like the US dollar can be replaced anytime soon. But it doesn't have to. All these bank partnerships are going to bring a lot of money to XRP.
More committed than ever to the simple goal of making XRP the world's reserve digital currency, right? These are exciting times. We don't know where the future is going to take us here, but I know I want to be a part of it. And I think you do too. That's why you show up every day. That's why you are trying to learn as much as you can, as quickly as you can. And it is an absolute honor to be on this journey with you. Have a good Sunday.
I mean, yeah, replacing the world reserve currency, it can become a legal tender at some point. But the thing we have for that is Bitcoin, and it's going to be for smaller countries. XRP will definitely hit the stock list, in my opinion. It's definitely going to go public with Ripple. At least that's what the rumors are, and that's already good enough for me. But what you guys think? Let me know in the comments below.